All right, thanks everyone for joining the session today. What we are discussing today is Azure VM backup configuration. And if I just have a quick recap, in the last session, we spoke about business continuity and disaster recovery solution. We try understanding, what is business continuity solution and when to use this, when we need this business continuity solution, what are the different situations where you see a data loss and how this business continuity solution is going to help us. So there are many other solutions, most of the organizations are using. Could be third-party backup solutions like Commvault, Veritas, different backup solutions we have. But when it comes to the Azure, so Microsoft introduced Azure native solution, which is the Azure Backup, which is an integral part of recovery service vault, business continuity and disaster recovery solution, right? So Azure Backup has the capabilities to perform the server level backup or VM level backup, I say, and the server can be running on the on-premises and Azure as well. Okay, so if you think you don't want to back up the entire server, you want to back up specific files or folders, even that is also feasible with the Azure Backup solution. And moreover, if you want to back up the Azure storage account file shares, that is also possible. And if you have a SQL database, running on Azure virtual machine, you can also start backing up the databases. So those are the features what you have with the Azure Backup solution, and we kind of tried elaborating, what steps you have to follow to configure the backup, what are the recommended, I mean, what are the prerequisites to configure the backup, and what kind of issues you might face it at a high level we discussed, and we also discussed what are the restore options, right? So what are the different scenarios where you have to perform the restore operation? Okay, so today what we'll do is we'll go ahead and set up the virtual machines, and we'll try to configure the backup for the virtual machines. And what we do is, we trigger the initial backup, and we will see or try to explore what are the options available when you trigger the backup. And so we'll also see if we can perform the recovery operations. And at the same time, we are going to perform the I would say, enable the log monitoring with the log analytics workspace. Okay, so just to explain you the environment. So what I'm going to do is, so I have my Azure subscription. This is the Azure subscription. And I have my virtual machines running in a virtual network. I'm just taking one virtual network and let's say one subnet. Okay, and you have multiple virtual machines here. Okay, and this entire environment is in a east-west location, which means I'm going to set up the virtual machines in the east-west location, and I'm also going to create a recovery service vault. Okay, and in this recovery service vault, we are going to use the Azure Backup solution. So I'm also going to create one more service, which is the log analytics workspace. We are going to say LAW in this throughout the sessions. So what we will do is we will configure backup for these virtual machines, okay, with the recovery service vault, and we will stream the backup jobs to the log analytics workspace. Once the jobs are streamed, what we are going to do is we are going to use the Custo query language, KQL queries, and to fetch the backup information, like backup information as in, like, how many VMs we have configured backup, and how many VMs backup jobs are executed, and when it is executed, and what kind of backup is it? Is it a successful or failure, or is it like failed with warnings, right? Those kind of information we are going to see once we enable it. So in this session, what we do, we configure backups, and we trigger the logs to the Loganalytics workspace, and we'll try to see if we can recover it. So by the time tomorrow we join the session again, so we'll see some data into the Loganalytics workspace. So later we'll see if we can use the Kusto queries to fetch the jobs and create some dashboards, and use some other services like, Logic Apps, or any other services to create or enable automated emails when there's a backup job fail. Okay, so I'm going to take help from Venu. So Venu is going to create a infrastructure for us. So just to empower them to do the labs by themselves, just to avoid the dependency on me. Okay, so Venu, it's your time. Go ahead and create the virtual machines, at least 2 virtual machines in east-west location, and create a recovery service vault in the east-west location. And here, just create a separate resource group for the virtual machine. Let's say production RG example, and the recovery service for, let's say, RSV hyphen RG, right, -01. Just put location into the naming standard, RSV hyphen, let's say, east to west, right, um, RSV hyphen east to west hyphen and RG-01 like this. You just create a recovery source vault, then create a one more solution, which is the Loganalytics workspace, and the Loganalytics workspace should be created under the monitoring resource group. So you can say MON hyphen east2s hyphen RG hyphen 01, and in this you are going to create a Loganalytics workspace. In case in future if you are going to get a logic app, let us put that logic app also here. So all the resources belongs to monitoring, let's put it here, and all the resources which are related to the backup, let's put it here, and all the production workloads like application servers, database servers, let's put in the production RG. Okay, so when you go ahead and share your screen, and let's get started from there. Okay,
Yes, so you want me to create 2 virtual missions in East US region with a different research group.
yeah,
Is
so
that
what,
right?
just to explain again, I'm just repeating it. Okay, let's create a infrastructure first. Okay, the step one, as part of the step one, you're going to create at least 2 virtual machines in one resource group, and followed by another resource group, and in that resource group you are going to keep your recovery source vault, and the third one is create another resource group and keep your log analytics workspace. Once you are done with the configuration, the fourth step is to, the second step is to stream the Azure recovery service vault jobs to Loganalytics workspace, then later configure backup for your virtual machines, and so that the jobs will be streaming already to the Loganalytics workspace. Once the backup is configured, you are going to trigger the manual backup, so that we can explore like what kind of process it is being followed. We'll try to take RDP to the server. We'll try to look at the logs, what's going to happen, and all those things. Okay.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm going to create a
So yeah.
just VM1 East US. We don't require redundancy as we're just doing a lab. Let me change the image type to Windows 2016 data center.
But yeah, so what, let's do one more thing. Next time when we are trying to create these resources, right, let's try to follow the best practices, right, in terms of the naming standards. Not just
Yeah,
follow RG1, VM1, right? We have to follow certain standards. We have to
yeah.
make a habit of following those standards, all right?
Yes, I agree that. But I mean, since I don't have idea like so whether it is app server or SQL server, so that's
That's
why
fine.
like
Yeah, we will
I just give the
design
generic
such a
name.
requirement in advance, and we'll follow that. Okay.
Yeah. So what is the size would you like to go with?
Yeah, you can
D
select
series
the,
or
yeah, that should be fine. One VCP is fine. We just for the VM2, let's take the little bit more resources. Okay.
okay? So username I will give
Yeah,
Azure
let's give the standard username and password. It's like one simple at one two three.
administrator. What is the password?
One simple at 1 2 3 capital O. Just give that for testing,
Okay.
right? For all the labs, you are going to follow the same thing.
One simple @123.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
Capital O.
Capital O, yeah. One simple @123. And inbound, I'm just going with the default because we need to RDP from outside. 3389 and go to next. Disk, I'm just choosing default, or I can also go with the standard SSD. And we want to delete the disk when we delete the VM, so I can just keep as is and coming to the network. So you want to create two VMs under the same virtual network, correct?
Correct, correct, correct. Yes, yes.
Okay, so I can create a VNet as dash VNet 1 and the address space
Yeah, you can just go with the default. No need to change anything.
default here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So next time what we will do is we'll try to define everything as a blueprint and we'll just go ahead and implement as per the blueprint, okay?
Yeah. I don't think I can RDP from this Mac.
That's fine. We'll take it later. Okay, let's set up the
Yeah,
environment first.
sure. Okay, so just creating. So you
So
want
you're
me to
going
create a,
very Mhm. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
sorry, you want me to create another VM in the same resource group, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Because I didn't follow, your full instructions, Okay, so I'm going to create the recovery service fault under the same region, East to West region. And
Yeah, you can go with the default options.
yeah, I'm going to go with the default option and networking. I want to allow from all the network for now. We can always configure tags later and review and create.
So Karthik, do you know what is the first thing that we have to check when you create a recovery service vault for the first time?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
What is the
What is the
first
first?
thing that you have to make a change in the recovery service vault when you create it?
I mean, what kind of change?
So, okay, when you
Sorry.
when you enable backup, where the data is being stored?
It's stored under the backup vault.
Is it storing in the backup vault, or there is some storage medium which is managed by Microsoft?
I mean, the storage, it will be managed by Microsoft. We are
Correct,
not going to
right?
create
So
any
what is the
storage account of
default
ourselves. Yeah.
setting? What is the default setting that is being configured under the recovery service vault for your storage account in the backend? So it's by default set for GRS. If you don't change it to LRS, right, it's gonna cost you
Yeah.
more. Okay, as soon as you create a recovery service vault, you have to go ahead and change the setting to the LRS. Okay, that's first thing. Because
Okay.
once you enable backup for any workload, it could be a virtual machine backup, it could be a database or files and folders backup, anything. Once you enable backup, you cannot change this. You only have to delete the recovery service vault and again have to make changes. Yeah, so
Yeah. So
make
yeah,
it
looks
to
like GRU.
LRS.
It's gonna cost. Okay.
Yeah, save this. And
Yeah.
by default, as I mentioned in the last session, to prevent from any accidental deletions, Microsoft by default enable the soft delete feature. Maybe it should be under the security settings. Can you click on the security settings under the recovery service file properties?
Yes.
You can see the soft delete by default it is set to 14 days. For the first 14 days, I think it is free. Though you deleted the backup data from the recovery source vault, the data still exists for the 14 days. Okay. Since it is a test, we are doing it. We don't want to have anything to prevent it. Let's enable the soft delete, Karthik. So what we will do, we'll try to delete the backup data at the end of the labs, and we will see how the experience is going to be, and later we'll try to undelete the operation. We'll come back here and disable the soft delete. Okay,
Yes.
so these two things you
Okay.
have to
So
validate. Yeah, next, you have to stream the logs to Logonetics workspace, correct? For that
yeah.
you
So
have to
before
create a,
stream, you have to
yeah.
create the Logantic workspace. Yeah. You want to create the Logantic workspace under the third resource. Okay. So while it's creating, so you want to enable the log streaming to that log analytic workspace which we have created.
Yeah, so once it is created, then only we can enable it.
Yeah, hopefully it should be creating within a couple of minutes.
Yeah, let's wait.
Yeah, okay, it's
Yeah,
done.
it's created. You can go to resource first. Okay, this is the Logonetics workspace. It's just like it stores logs. It's not specific only for the specific to recovery service vault. And this feature can show the logs of different Azure services. Almost all the Azure services have a functionality to integrate the logs to Logonetics workspace, because this is one of the centralized monitoring solution that Microsoft is offering. So almost all the services, maybe there are a couple of services which still don't have the integration with this Logonetics workspace, but majority of the Azure services have the integration with the Logonetics workspace. And how the Logonetics space works is you stream the logs to the workspace, and the amount of data that is being stored in the Logonetics workspace, you'll be charged accordingly. And you can also set the retention. Let's say you have streaming various services like Azure backup, storage logs, and networking logs, network services logs, different services logs you're streaming to the Logonetics workspace. And you are keeping it for a year, two, more than that, right? So you will be unnecessarily charging for it. It's always better to set the retention, 30 days, or 60 days or 90 days. You can set the retention, and it will automatically the data will be disappeared after the retention is expired. This will ensure that you save the data. Okay, and if you have more data that is coming into your Logonetics workspace on a daily basis, you can also go for some discounted rates. So you can see 100 GB per day committed tier, right? So you get 15% discount. If your more data is coming, let's say 200 gigabytes per day, get 20% of the discount. Likewise, so if you plan to use a centralized monitoring solution, so better to stream all the logs to Logonetics workspace and just explore the service, and try to implement it so that you can save the cost for your monitoring solution. Otherwise, if it is a Splunk example, right, you have to have a Splunk license, you have to install the Splunk application in one of the server. Maybe nowadays they are introducing SaaS based service as well, but still It's a third-party service. You have to invest a lot compared to this log native Azure services, and it's native to Azure, and you have one vendor like Microsoft, which will who will take care of your OS Windows operating system, who will take care of your SQL database, SQL server applications, who will take care of your cloud platform, whatnot. So many things, right? So one platform can give you everything. So that's the reason most of the customers even prefer to move to the cloud environment and try to utilize these native services. Okay, so now what we will do is we created a VMs, we have an infrastructure. Just assume that you have an infrastructure. Now your task is to configure backup for them. All right, so we want to ensure that we have a centralized monitoring for your backup. That's why we introduced the Loganalytics workspace and we created it. Now what we will do, we will first stream the logs to Loganalytics workspace of your Recovery Search Vault backup jobs. Then we will try to configure the backup. Okay, so Karthik, over to you.
Yes, thank Kamal. So before that, I have a quick question. So if you see the discount percentage that Microsoft offering, whatever like 15, 20%, so do we only get the discount when we actually select this plan, or
Yeah,
even if you go with the pay as you go, we still get the discount?
now you have to select it.
What if you are not sure that, for example, how much data we are going to inject per day? So if you are not sure, uh, how
Can
we
you
can go in
expand
that
that? Can you
scenario?
click on it? Yeah, can you click on it? Can you scroll down? You have a select option. So what you're saying is, okay, I've created a Loganalytics workspace. I started streaming the data and I have been built based on the pay-as-you-go rates. But I didn't know that I have this 15% discount option. It's a mistake that you're doing, right? Whenever you implement any solution, right, you are going to thoroughly investigate, right? It's not like, we are just doing the labs. Just we have to come out of, lab mindset, right? So we have just think that what if it is a real production environment, real organization? We are moving to the cloud to the save the cost, right? When we are introducing a solution in our cloud environment, it's just not like, we suggest. We do a lot of POCs, we do a lot of thorough research, and we do a cost comparison with the other solutions, what we have. So during that analysis, we may think, okay, let's go with the pay as you go, right? So you should also have some pre-checks, some kind of validation that you perform, how much is being utilizing on a monthly basis. All right, or maybe how you should have some kind of insights, you enable it and start closely monitoring it. So most of the organization will have some kind of dashboards created to review this usage, how much is being streamed and how much is the utilization. So based on that, you can just go ahead and change it. Got it?
So if we are not sure, we can always
Can always
come
go with.
back and see
Yes,
how much data we are using, and based on that, we can take a
yeah,
decision whether we can go with the 100 GB or 200 GB. So
of
yeah,
course. Can you go up?
good one.
Can you scroll up? Can you scroll a little bit up? Go up. In the right side, you see the usage chart, right? So the usage chart will definitely give you the such kind of insights. And there's a usage details also. There's a hyperlink in the top left, right? Below the estimated cost. Go up, yeah, a little bit left. Yeah, you see, so that will also give you the information. We can also use the Azure Advisor solution that will also give you some more information. And every organization does the cost optimization parallelly. So your operations team, or you're working with automation, so they do the regular checks on a couple of services. Let's say if it's a VM, right? So how many virtual machines we have and how much is the utilization, average CPU utilization. Yeah, are we fully utilizing CPU in last 15 days or 30 days? What is the utilization? Is it beyond 50%? Then you can think to reduce the VM size. Or probably if there are any unutilized disk, are not utilizing snapshots. So those are like, as part of your cloud operations, you are going to perform your pre-checks and daily validations, and as part of the validations, this is one of them, right? Monitoring the usage of your workspace and see if you can get some discount. If you're not sure, then you can go back to Microsoft and ask them, okay, is there any discount that we can get it based on our usage or consumption? So definitely you can have a review. But yes, in the organizations, before we introduce any solution, we have a detailed review, and we will also have a plans to, review our environment on a regular basis. Let's say every 15 days or no, 1 week, you will have a quick review of your cost and see how much is the utilization, how much is being, which service is consuming more. Okay, so that's how we do it. Okay, go ahead and
Yeah.
enable the
Yep.
service now.
So now I'm going to integrate recovery service vault to the log analytic workspace. So it will start sending logs to the log analytic workspace.
So here, just
So
to, we have to remember one thing here. So recovery service vault is where we are, right? Recovery service vault is a business continuity and disaster recovery solution. So business continuity is referring to the backup, disaster recovery referring to the Azure site recovery. When you look at the logs category, if you can scroll down, right, you see Azure backup reporting data, core Azure backup data, add-on Azure backup job data. And if you go down, you see Azure site recovery jobs, Azure site recovery events, which means if this recovery service vault is being used to configure the replication for your virtual machines or enable site recovery, those logs also will be streaming to the same log analytics workspace. So in this case, we only have the backups. Let us choose the information about the backup jobs only. Okay, so yeah, go ahead and select the backup related categories. I believe you should not select the first one, because the way how log analytics workspace receiving the data is changed in the backend. So don't select the first one, select the remaining ones. Yeah. So it's not only backup jobs, it will also give you the information about your backup items. All right, now we have to select the target. What is the target? You see the target, there are log analytics workspace and storage account and event hub. So you have an option, where you want to send your data. So if you are using any third-party tools, like let's say Splunk or ServiceNow, any other tools, right? Then you can send these logs to Event Hub, and from Event Hub you can stream the logs to the Splunk or Zabbix, any other monitoring tools to monitor your backup jobs. If you are going to use the Azure native backups, a native monitoring solution, then you can stream them to the log analytics workspace. And if you want to archive these backup jobs to your storage account, and you have some other service, let's say Power BI, where you are going to fetch these jobs from the storage account and you create some dashboard and have some visibility, that's where you go with the second option, which is archiving to storage account. But many of the customers, what I see is they select either second or first option or third option, and first option is the majority of the customers who are using it. Okay, so go ahead and select the first option and select the log analytics workspace that you created. Okay, it's not region specific, guys. You can create any your workspace can be in any other location. That's not a problem. And the reason why I asked you to unselect the categories, you can see the information here. The destination table, the log analytics workspace, basically it stores the data in a certain sequence, right? It's like a database. You insert the table, and row data will be inserted in the rows and column format. Similar way, you have tables created inside the log analytics workspace, and the data will be updated accordingly. So with the latest changes at Microsoft, they introduced the resource specific logs or tables. And if you're choosing this option, then you shouldn't select the first one. Even the information will also give you the same in the bottom. For Azure backup events, if you choose resource specific mode, you must select the following events only. You can see, right, the information is given there: core Azure backup, add an Azure backup job, such kind of category jobs only you have to select. The Azure backup report even work only, that only works in the Azure diagnostic mode, right? That's why we unselected that option. Okay, now we have to provide the name for your diagnostic setting. If you can scroll up, you will see the diagnostic setting name. Let's say backup jobs hyphen LAW. Okay, you whatever is suitable for you.
I would say it's backup job dash logs.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now you go ahead and save this configuration. So we are preparing the infrastructure, to implement the backup solution. All right. So now we are done with the configuration. So now what we have to do is we have to configure backup for your virtual machines. Okay. To configure backups, what we need to do is you have to go to recovery service vault. You have a getting started section. Under the getting started section, you have to select where your workload is running. So obviously the virtual machine is in Azure. You're going to say Azure. But if you click on the drop down, can you go back? Yeah, if you click on the drop down, you see you can back up the workloads running on Azure, Azure Stack Hub, Azure Stack HCI, on premises as well. If you select the on premises, can you click on premises and you see what kind of workload you can back up? The virtual machines can be running on Hyper-V, VMware, the applications can be SQL, SharePoint, or maybe if you want to specifically back up files and folder, that is also possible. If you go back to the drop down and select the Azure, yeah, so you can see the drop down here. You can back up the Azure virtual machines, Azure file share, and SQL Server in Azure VM, and you can also back up the SAP HANA in Azure VM. So out of these four scenarios, we are going to implement the first three scenarios. So today we are going to implement the Azure virtual machine backup. Can you select the virtual machine backup? Now you can go ahead and configure the backup for your virtual machines. So there's a backup policy, the standard and enhanced backup policies. So you can select whichever is convenient for our business requirement. So let's go with the standard backup policy, and you can click on create a new policy option. Let's create a new policy. And this is very, very important. You have to choose the right policy for your workload. And so most of the organization, as is explained initially, so there will be standard procedures that are defined. So what should be the policy naming standard you have to follow, and when to trigger the backup, what is the recovery point duration, retention duration, and do we need a weekly retention, monthly retention, yearly retention? This all will be defined by your backup architects and or maybe your solution architect, a technical architect, and accordingly the implementation will start happening. Okay, so the frequency, if you click on the frequency drop down, there are two frequency types. One is a daily backup frequency and weekly backup frequency. So we will be choosing daily backup frequency in this case, and daily means what time you want to trigger the backup and what is the time zone. So most of the times, we try to configure backup in the non-business hours. So you can choose your non-business hours time frame and trigger the backup. But specifically, why we have to choose the non-business hours is most of the times, we see in the server performance issues or application performance issues just because of the backup solution. There will be a lot of complaints towards that. But when it comes to the Azure, it is not necessarily, because Azure VM backup is very seamless. Um, it will have a very lightweight service that gets installed inside the machine, and that takes care of the backup process, and it takes very less time. So that's the beauty of the Azure native backup service. So it's not required to think about such a performance issues if you are using the Azure native backup solution. We had such problems, like let's say after around 2 or 3 years ago, the backup is triggered and performance issues are happening. But uh, at least first for the past 1 year, I'm not seeing any issues that raised Azure VM backup is like very slow and it's not happening, it's not moving forward, or it is impacting the Azure VM performance, all those things. Okay, so it's better to plan it anyways after the business hours. But in case you are a 24/7 customer, and you nothing to worry. Okay, and we have two types of recovery points here, instant restore, and the other one is the long-term restore, I would say. The instant restore is available for 2 to 5 days. Basically, it trigger the backup. When the backup job is triggered, there are two stages. One is taking snapshot, and the other one is the transferring data to the backup world. The first step is taking snapshot. As soon as the snapshot process is taken, and you will have a recovery point. That recovery point we say instant recovery point. That is, that can be stored up from 2 days to 5 days maximum. And the long-term retention, what I'm referring, which is transferring data to the vault, that is the range that you are going to specify in the bottom. The retention range, you can specify 30 days, 7 days, more than that, maybe 365 days. It's up to your business requirement. Even if you go for the weekly retention, which means on a week, on a specific day, whatever the backup is happening, you want that specific backup to be available for a couple of weeks. That's what a weekly retention. And the same thing with the back monthly as well, monthly and yearly. In a month specific, day of a week, and whatever the backup is happening, you want to retain for certain number of months. So you are letting your backup service know how long the data has to be retained. So in this case, we will just go ahead and unselect everything. But in the production and real-time environment, you will see daily backup. Production, it is 30 days, and your non-production usually 7 days. Again, it depends on the customer to customer, and depends on the application criticality, right? The workload criticality. So you can always say as a standard process for the production, 30 days is what we choose it, and non-production we choose 7 days as a standard. So as I said, it can be changed, depends on the your customer environments, right? Click OK now. You are configuring the backup policy, which is successfully completed. The next step is to add your virtual machines to the recovery service vault. When you click on add, it is going to discover the virtual machine that can be backed up and that are in the same region as vault, not protected by any other vault. We discussed these points in the last session too, but you are able to see them in the real time now. Click OK now. Okay, so once you select the machines, right, it's saying the standard policy not supported for trusted Azure virtual machines. Okay, so while creating the virtual machine, what Karthik have chosen is the security type as trusted platform instead of choosing the standard. That's fine. We can trusted here TPM can be enabled for this virtual machines, and that is supported with the enhanced backup policy. So Karthik, what you can do is you can cancel this process. We don't have time to recreate the virtual machines with the standard security method. And even if it is real time, I mean, you will not even have a option to do it, right? It's a production that you created. Maybe you're creating a backup for existing production server, which is already live. So it's little difficulty to make changes. And before we configure the backup, that is where we have to have a standard procedural document. Probably we should have a ARN template, a Terraform template that is deployed to avoid these human errors, right? Click on create new policy. You will see almost all same options. So we don't need to make any changes. So you see, this is another beautiful thing, it's giving hourly backup frequency. So where you don't see this in a standard backup policy, hourly, daily, weekly. So it's up to you again, guys. It's up to the organization. Hourly backup is good for the application team. They say, okay, my application running every day and 24/7, and we don't know when it is going to be down in case if there is any small changes by OS or any other thing, right? So I will have at least last 1 hour data which I can recover it. But it also involves in terms of the cost and other aspects, right? So it's important to choose the right frequency, whether it's a hourly or daily backup. So it's again depends on the critical. If it's a very critical application, you can go with the hourly backup as well. Okay, click OK now. And let's discover the virtual machines once again and select them. Okay, and click OK. So the good thing with this is, right, it's giving you the information right in there itself. So otherwise you have to try to understand, okay, why backup is failing, look at the logs and try to identify the problem. But it's good, Microsoft has improved a lot in these aspects. We are able to see why, the reason for it. So can you click on the disk preview? So if you have multiple disk, I think this is giving an option to select the specific disk and just make a note of it. It's in a preview, when it is in a preview. So you might see limited features or capabilities. So it's up to your business requirement whether you want to allow it or enable it or not. Okay, so go ahead and enable the backup now. So this process may
And
take at
Kamal, I
least
didn't realize
5 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't realize that I choose the trusted security. I thought I choose the standard series.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
So that's the reason, right? You see the importance of the automation. Now, creating virtual machine took a lot of time for us. I just paused the recording for some time. Otherwise, it's going to be a very lengthy recording too, right? And while creating, you have to choose many options, and you might choose a different location. You might choose a different resource group. That's why we always need automation, and that's why companies are moving towards automation. Automation through either PowerShell or ARM templates or Terraform, right? So there you have very limited options to select. You just provide the name if possible. Even name also is automated. Maybe location, you choose the location and resource group, then and click on deploy, right? Or execute it. So it's going to deploy the resource automatically. Okay. So that's the importance of the automation, and we'll try to implement more automation scenarios in upcoming sessions. We'll see. So here, before you go there, right, let's go to the backup jobs first. Go to the backup jobs. Yeah, backup jobs. And you can see operation. So what's the operation? Operation name is configuring backup or configure backup. There will be other operations like job is an operation, triggering backup job, and there will be other type of jobs like restore is another job operation, right? So this is a configuring backup job which has happened and we just took less than a minute to complete. You can see the duration as well, start time and total duration. You can click on view details. It will give you some same details with a different way. Okay, it's here it is not providing the duration and all, but when you trigger the manual backup, it will provide you the retention and all. So here you don't see retention. Yeah, this is not the backup anyways, right? It's configuring backup. You don't see the retention. That's fine. Let's go to the backup items now. Go to virtual machines backup. And you see the status. It's waiting for the initial backup. Initial backup is pending. So it automatically trigger the backup based on the backup policy that you've chosen. Otherwise, you can also go to backup item by click on view details and trigger the manual backup. So if you look at this, right, there is a restore VM option and a file recovery option also available, resume backup also available, delete backup data is available, but they are not highlighted. The reason why restore VM file recovery is not available is there is no recovery point created because it's the first backup solution. First we just added. Once you see the first recovery point, you will start seeing recovery, restore VM, file recovery option, and those things. When you stop the backup and you want to resume the backup again, the resume backup option will be highlighted. So depends when you start working on it further, you will see these options are highlighted automatically. And as soon as the backup job is completed, if you come to the bottom of this page, you see recovery points. Okay, you have a crash consistency recovery point, application consistency recovery point category, and file system consistency recovery point category. So crash consistency is nothing but your VM is crashed in simple words, right? Your VM is powered off. Your Azure backup solution is going to take the backup of the disks which are attached to your virtual machine. And when it comes to the application consistency recovery point, so the backup job is going to work with the backup extension or components are going to work with the VM operating system components such as your VSS writers, application writers, and it ensures that the data is written to the disk before it takes a backup of your disk, so that you will have a consistency of your data. And this is only available for the Windows because VSS is limited to the Windows operating system. And what you see as a file system consistent recovery point, that is for the Linux servers. If you have a Linux servers that you're triggering backup, and they will have the file system consistency recovery point if your VM is working fine and it's triggered the backup. Otherwise, it will take into the crash consistent recovery point. Okay, these are the recovery point. When backup job is completed, one of these recovery point is allocated for your virtual machine backup. You will see below, you see a table, creation time and consistency. The creation time tell you when the backup job is triggered, all right, and when the job recovery point is available. And consistency will tell you, is it a crash, replication, or file system consistency. And recovery type, the last column, what you see, right? The last column says, is it an instant recovery point or a vault recovery point? There's two stages I just explained you, right? So instant recovery point will be generated within like 10 to 15 minutes, all right, and it is valid for 2 to 5 days. So once the instant recovery point retention is expired, the recovery type will be changed for this specific recovery point to the vault standard. Okay, so let's go ahead and trigger the manual backup now. We don't want to wait for schedule backup to be happening. So this is where you're going to specify the retention, how long your backup data to be available. So in this case, by default it is taken 1 month. You can go with the 1 month, that's fine. Anyways, we are going to clean up after the end-to-end lab. All right, click on OK now and trigger it. So now, since it is a testing, we just selected the 1 month or maybe 7 days. But when you are working as an Azure admin, right, you get a request saying that, hey, can you trigger the backup for this virtual machine? Then maybe you get a request over the email or Teams, or maybe there'll be a ticket that is assigned to your queue and you'll start looking into it. So what do you do in that case? You will go ahead and trigger the backup, and you will say backup is successfully completed, and they say thanks a lot, and it's good, right? But before that, we should also ask a couple of things. Why do you need a backup? Because you already have a scheduled backup for this machine. Why do we need to have additional backup for this, right? So let's say just backup completed an hour ago, and they're asking you to trigger the backup now, right? So you can say there an hour ago there is a backup already available. So do we still need to have another backup in place, another backup required? So if they give a justification, okay, we are performing the application upgrade. We just want to ensure that they have we have some backup before we perform this activity. So maybe you'll have a conversation with them and try to understand the requirement. And sometimes they'll not specify when to trigger the backup. Let's say now the current time is, let's say, 11 a.m. EST, and they want you to take the backup at 3 p.m. EST. So they don't mention those details in the ticket or whatever it is. So you just got the ticket and you see the server name and you found the server name and recovery says vault. You trigger the backup at 11 a.m. So which will not help. So always you have to clarify, okay, why do you need a backup and when do you need a backup, right? So before your application process starts, do I need to take the backup, or I have to take the backup right away, or maybe today or tomorrow? So you have to get those clarifications, right? Then you can go ahead and trigger the backup. Now you say technically triggering backup, it took just less than a few seconds, and even it's completed, a backup job is triggered in 1 minute. But you have to follow the process. As an Azure administrator, you need to ensure that you know the process. You are aware of the process and follow the process. Small mistakes, what you are going to make, is going to impact your credibility at the customer side. Okay, it's not your team or yourself, it's going to be impacting for entire, as an organization. It's always important that you review the policies and procedures. Though there's a lot of manual work and efforts involved, it's good for the long run business. Okay, so now you need to go back to the recovery search world and check the backup status from the Azure backup job section. Okay, you are at the backup job section. Okay, hold on here. So you have the virtual machine one, okay, and you see the operation as backup. And sometimes you see operation as restore, okay, and sometimes you see an operation as disable. Okay, they are the backup operation. So currently the backup operation is in progress, and you can see the start time, and the duration is just 2 minutes 59 seconds. When you click on view details, you will see the recovery point expiry for this job. But if it is a scheduled backup, you don't see the recovery point expiry date here. Since it is a manual backup and you have specified the recovery point expiry, that's why you are able to see it here. So when it comes to this subtask, you see the taking snapshot or take snapshot. We just took 3 minutes 30 seconds, and it goes on maybe within 5 to 10 minutes. You will see this job is completed. During this job, right, that is where the Azure Backup Service or extension is going to trigger the backup or take a snapshot of your VM disk. You have VM and VM has, let's say, 10 or 15 disks, and those 15 disk snapshot will be taken. And once the snapshot process is completed, it's going to give you a recovery point, and the recovery point type will be instant recovery point. Okay. And the next stage is once it take the snapshot, there is no relation with the VM. So whatever the snapshot it has been taken, that snapshot will be transferred to the Azure backend storage account, which is managed by Microsoft, and that will be kept for the long-term retention. What you specify, like 30 days, 1 year, 10 years, and 19 years, right? So that's about the long-term retention data that we refer as Vault Standard Recovery Type. Okay, so by default, when you initiate a restore operation, if the date or recovery point date that you have chosen, if it has the instant recovery point, automatically it will take the instant recovery point and initiate the restore. If it doesn't have the instant recovery point, it will take the Vault Standard recovery point and it will try to recover from the Azure backend storage account. Okay, so that you will see option for sure maybe in couple of minutes. Okay, let's wait for it to complete. And meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can ask me.
Yeah, Kamal, I do have a question. So when it come to restore, we have like two options. One is the recovery from the snapshot, and if you already passed 2 days, then the other option is recovery from the vault. So I'm trying to understand like what exactly the difference between restoring from snapshot versus restoring the data from vault. Is there any difference in terms of data, or if you recover from snapshot, is the restore option
Yeah,
time take
yeah.
less time, or what
Yeah,
exactly
so
the difference it is?
that's exactly, you mentioned, right? Recovering, when you see a restore and it has the recovery type as snapshot and Vault Standard, both of them, right? By default, it takes a snapshot. It's automatically the when you have the recovery type as snapshot and you are performing the restore, it just take less than couple of minutes, let's say 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the worst case, to perform the restore operation. But if it is the same operation with the Vault Standard recovery point where you don't have the snapshot as the recovery point type, right? That takes a lot of time. Sometimes it takes 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, depends on the number of disk you have and amount of data that you have to restore. So to reduce this, restore time, and to improve the to reduce the backup time, right? Microsoft introduced this instant recovery point. The primary goal for introducing the instant recovery point is to reduce the recovery time. So let's say you have a critical business situation occurred and you have to recover your service by restoring the data from the backup. So you have decided to go with the backup and you're trying to recover it for the last 1 day data, and it's taking hours and hours, which will not help, right? That's why this instant recovery point will help you in recovering the data. Okay, whenever the backup is triggered, there is a resource group that gets created under the Azure subscription, and with the location as your recoveries as well. It's a West Europe, and that will have something called restore point collection. The restore point collection will have the reference for your data that is being the snapshot that is being taken, and you don't see that snapshot in the Azure portal. That is being managed by Microsoft. So when you perform the restore with the help of this restore point collection, the snapshot will be loaded and help you with the recovery restore. So those options you have it. Okay.
Yes. So, and the other question I have, in general, let's say if it is a production or non-production, let's say if we have some kind of a deployment or some kind of a changes that we need to make the application, we usually take a snapshot, right? So assume that we already have a backup service enabled on that particular mission. So if you want to, so let's say if you are deploying something, so if you want to take a snapshot, so what is the best way? Should we trigger a manual backup or should we manually take the uh, data disk and operating system manual snapshot?
Okay. So basically, you want to understand the difference between the disk snapshot and Azure VM backup, and when there's a requirement to have some backup before your application upgrades or any changes, which is the best solution, right? Correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, I asked you this in the interview and you're asking me. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that's a good question, right? And we need to have a good clarity when to use which solution. Okay, so it's again, you need to cross question your application team. You need to tell, okay, both should work, all right? But um, if you go with the Azure VM backup, okay, it takes 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes 15 minutes to complete the instant or recovery point snapshot, right? So with this process, you will have a consistency of your data. You will have a application consistency recovery point that gets created, and you can specify keep it for 7 days or whatever. It is automatically disappear, after that. Okay, it's a good solution that you can implement it. If you already have a backup configure for your VM, you can go and do it. And with this process, right, your VM has 10 disk example, right? 10 disk, it will automatically take the backup. When it goes to the snapshot, you need to take the snapshot for 10 disks. So you'll have 10 snapshots. Okay. In case if you want to recover it in future, right, you have to create 10 disk again from the snapshot and swap it with your virtual machine, right? And during the snapshot process, so yeah, the Azure component will not be able to talk to the Azure Core OS component like VSS, right? When it comes to the Azure backup, it talks to the VSS and other core components and try to take the consistency backup, right? That's the difference between these two, and we always recommend to go with the Azure backup solution instead of going with the snapshot. In case if you have a limitations to trigger the backup and you have to follow a lot of procedures to do that, right? Then you can go with the disk snapshot. So disk snapshot is a better solution only, but I always recommend in case if there are any application services that are running, you can just bring them down and take the disk snapshot. All right. So with that way, there is no issue with the data latency. Data is not being latest on the server, or when you recover it, such kind of issues you can avoid. Is it clear, Karthik?
Yes, so if I understand correctly, so if you already have a backup service enabled, so it is always recommend to go with the Azure Backup Service Vault to take the instant snapshot or whatever it is like.
Correct.
So we always recommend to go with the backup vault.
Correct. Okay.
Got
Can
it.
you do a refresh there? You see, guys, the taking snapshot is completed and it just took 8 minutes 20 seconds, and transferring data to the vault is happening. So during this process, so there is no burden on your virtual machine, and the virtual machine can run as it is. There is no performance issues just because of the backup job. And though the backup job is running for, let's say, next 5 hours or 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours, so your virtual machine will not have any problem, because there's no contact with your virtual machine. Once the snapshot is taken, that snapshot itself is being transferred to the backend storage account. So with this, Microsoft can avoid the performance issues for your virtual machines, and you don't need to worry about, backup job is taking 1 day to complete it, because you already have a instant recovery point which is completed within 8 minutes 20 seconds. Okay, can you go to the backup items and let us check the recovery points? Backup items. Go to the first one because we triggered the backup for that. And if you look at this, guys, no, wait, just wait. You can see the recovery points in the bottom, right? You can see when the recovery point is created, the creation time, which is just few minutes ago, right? And what is the consistency type? It's an application consistency recovery point. And what is the recovery type? It's a snapshot, right? Because right now only the snapshot is being taken. That's why you only see the snapshot. Once the second stage of your backup job, which is transferring data to the vault, is completed, you will see the recovery type as snapshot and vault standard, both of them. And once the snapshot retention is expired, let's say in the retention backup policy is mentioned the instant restore is only for 2 days. So today you are triggering this backup, and after 2 days, if you come and check this recovery point, it will say only the vault standard, because this recovery point will expire after 2 days for this snapshot. Okay, so now since the first backup job is completed, you will see in the top restore VM file recovery option is highlighted, right? When you stop backup, then you will see resume backup and delete backup data, and other options will be highlighted. Okay, so we will stop the session for today, because I don't want to feed more data. This is just to avoid any confusion on this technology. So what we can do is in the next session, we'll look at all these recovery options, and we'll also try to query the information from the Logantics workspace. We'll try to create some kind of dashboard or kind of automated email alerts with the data that is available. We'll perform the restore. We'll also look at the monitoring side. We'll also look at the logs location and what kind of issues that you face it and how to fix them in the next session. All right, so thank you everybody for your time, and if you have any questions, Karthik and the team, yeah, you let me know. In case if anybody watching this video on the YouTube, just post your questions on the channel, or you can send an email to us, support@vvhitsolutions.com, and I'm glad to support you guys. Okay, any questions, Karthik and team?
I'm good. Should you want me to enable the backup for the VM2 or just
That's
leave it?
fine. It will automatically let automatic backup triggered. So,
Okay. Yeah.
all right. Thanks everybody. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.